Mr. David Jenkins, President, Conservatives for Responsible Stewardship. David has worked for CRS and its predecessor organization, Republicans for Environmental Protection, since 2005. He has worked on the Hill. He has worked for the American Canoe Association's Director of Conservation and Public Policy for 10 years, worked for Senator Pete Dominich of New Mexico, and we are very gratified and happy to have your comments and your perspectives today. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Ranking Member Grijalva and Ranking Member Thompson, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. As you noted, I am David Jenkins, President of Conservatives for Responsible Stewardship, a national grassroots organization of conservatives committed to stewardship of our natural heritage. Let me begin by saying that I'm disappointed that we are not discussing this problem at a full committee hearing. In light of the Malheur Refuge takeover, increasing threats against land managers, and the rise of militant groups like Oath Keepers, this is clearly an issue that deserves bipartisan attention. At CRS, we increased our focus on such extremism after the 2014 Bundy Ranch standoff in Nevada. The initial decision by law enforcement to stand down during that incident was understandable given the circumstances. But we became concerned when more than a year passed without Mr. Bundy or any of his supporters being held accountable for their crimes. You cut through the Bundy clan's professed beliefs, and what you really have is a bunch of bullies determined to get their way. The use of armed force and the threat of violence to get one's way in a democracy is the worst kind of bullying. It undermines the rule of law and tramples on the rights of every other American. We believe that the Obama administration was far too timid following Bunkerville and the Bundy Ranch. When dealing with any type of bully, appeasement never works. It only emboldens. A reasonable assumption, given the overlap of individuals involved, is that the Malheur Refuge takeover would never have occurred had those responsible for Bunkerville been properly held accountable. Now that arrests have been made for both incidents, we hope this signals a more aggressive approach to militant extremism on our public lands. We have also been very concerned about those, be they on the political right or left, who attach the conservative or patriot label to these extremists. There is nothing conservative or patriotic about them. Rejecting authority of the United States and ignoring laws enacted according to the Constitution is the opposite of patriotic. Likewise, genuine conservatism is the polar opposite of radicalism. It respects tradition. It recognizes the importance of order. It values personal responsibility, and it upholds the rule of law. I'm sure most Americans consider themselves patriotic, and many, like me, also consider themselves conservative. No good can come from attaching labels to these radicals that may elicit sympathy or serve to legitimize their dangerous views in the minds of others. This is also why it is so important that extremism and violence on our public lands be clearly rejected by Republicans and Democrats alike. Unfortunately, there are a handful of Republican lawmakers who have chosen to sympathize or side with extremists like the Bundys. This includes Nevada State Assemblywoman Michelle Fiore and other members of the so-called Coalition of Western States, who during the Refuge takeover actually went to Oregon to assist the occupiers. Even more troubling, the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee may fall into this category as well. One of the reasons we are here today is Chairman Bishop's unwillingness to hold hearings on such extremism. Mr. Bishop also declined Ranking Member Grijalva's request to jointly offer a resolution condemning the Malheur occupation. Instead, Bishop said that he sympathized with the militants' frustration, and he accused land management agencies of abusing people. The chairman's rhetoric seems tailor-made to inflame passions and incite more radicalism. He has equated our government to bandits in the night and characterized public land prevention efforts with terms like invade, seize, shameful, and evil. Why would he choose those words unless he's trying to provoke outrage? This rhetoric would be irresponsible under any circumstance, but given recent events, it's inexcusable. Equally inexcusable is legislation introduced by Congressman Chaffetz that would strip Forest Service and BLM of their law enforcement authority, leaving our national forest, conservation lands, and those who enjoy them even more vulnerable. Regardless of where one stands on public land policy, actions and rhetoric that encourage or support militant extremism must stop. Despite all their rhetoric about the Constitution, freedom, and God, in truth, these extremists, along with those who support them, are attacking our nation, its laws, its values, its history, and the democratic processes established by our forefathers. We need strong bipartisan leadership to present a united front against this threat, to protect our national public lands, to keep visitors safe, to enforce the law with, as Theodore Roosevelt put it, resolute firmness, and to provide our federal agencies with the resources and support they need to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In that case, I just want to especially thank, this is a terrific panel, by the way, all of you. I'm very grateful for your participation. Mr. Jenkins, I'm especially glad that someone who is a conservative from a conservative group has taken up this cause. It's so disappointing to me, and I think all of my colleagues, that we're not here together with our Republican colleagues with the full authority of the United States Congress doing oversight on what is so obviously an issue of national interest and an issue that pertains very squarely to the security of the American people. And I want to ask about this disconnect that we see with our friends across the aisle. Anytime a security issue can be pinned on Muslims or on foreign terror groups or on immigrants, they're very quick to mobilize the power of this Congress, you know, in oversight or otherwise. And yet this issue of homegrown terrorism, and here we are, you know, days after an episode of homegrown terror, a different flavor to it, to be sure, but it doesn't seem to get the same, anywhere near the same attention from our Republican colleagues. How can we make sure that when we think about the security of the American people, everything that's a security threat, including these unhinged groups, individuals that are ready to take over federal facilities and kill federal officers, that too is on the radar and merits the attention of our Congress?
Is it on? Okay. I think, you know, it's a tough thing because I think we have a few members of Congress. I don't think a majority of Republicans are intentionally trying to avoid this specific issue, but I think you have some that are in leadership positions that indeed are. I think especially when you're talking about the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, you're talking about the Utah delegation, you're talking about maybe some in the Nevada delegation, in Idaho. You've got some people there that have this extreme, you know, anti-public land worldview. And I think it's unfortunate that they sometimes see these public land extremists as possible vehicles for them to get their message out and to get people to think of public lands in a different way. And so, you know, that's the only thing I can you know, only way I can explain it, why, you know, someone like a Congressman Bishop will say things that are clearly intended to inflame passions and give people the wrong idea. I mean, they say they need to give these lands back to the rightful owners. Well, you know, we won these lands in the war with Mexico before these states even existed. They've always belonged to all Americans. Right. And so, you know, I think the problem is that, you know, unfortunately, you know, the other side of the aisle has given power to people who have radical views.
If I could sneak in one last piece of this, Ms. MacNab testified that these folks are full of anger in their angry, violent echo chamber that exists in large part online, and there's no one in position of leadership in the Republican Party right now to calm them down. Sounds like you would take it one step further and suggest that there are unfortunately people in the leadership in the Republican majority of Congress that are not only not calming them down, but that are actively inflaming them. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. It's a handful. It's not a majority by any means, but it's a handful that have authority and power, and they have a very loud voice, and they control agendas. They control the whether or not we can have a full committee hearing on an issue like this. And so I think it behooves all of us to work with those Republicans, not from Utah and some other places that care about law and order, that are true conservatives, that understand that this is not appropriate behavior, and make sure that we have a bipartisan front. If you have to go around these other people, fine, but it needs to be a bipartisan front.
Thank you, and we're going to pause.
That's why this hearing is being convened. Let me, if my staff will keep me apprised of the second vote, let me, if someone would determine whether we're at the second vote, I'd appreciate it. Let me try, first of all, let me thank all the witnesses, but I want to make a comment and ask for Ms. MacNab, and then I want to thank Mr. Jenkins and ask him a question, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge conservatives for responsible stewardship. Let me thank you, because I think the term should be now that we're Americans, and we're Americans on an issue that we all can be helpful in. Ms. MacNab, thank you. Ms. Jenkins, I have about 10 seconds before I have to do a wild dash, but how can we, just give me one sentence, how we can help you and your conservative movement on this issue?
Well, I think, first of all, we should make sure we don't label these extremists with a conservative brand. And we need to reach out, both parties reach out across the aisle to those who are willing to work together and present a united front, because we don't want this to be some kind of polarized things where somehow these people are equated as conservative or patriotic or anything like that.
Brilliant. And it goes on the other side for liberals. Thank you for that instruction. I will follow it, and I'm going to yield and have you in recess for your what you may want to do in just a moment as I go and vote. But thank you so very much for this excellent, excellent presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, just 2 points. There's been a lot of talk about why we don't focus on these domestic terrorists and call them terrorists. And in the case of this public land extremism, we have a situation where these people wear cowboy hats, they wave the American flag, they call themselves patriots. And the thing is, we cannot let them define themselves. We have got to define them as the extremists and radicals that they are, and the fact that they're not patriotic. They're actually working against our nation and our values. And so I think we have to make sure that we pull that veil of legitimacy that they put on themselves. We take that away from them. Secondly, the other thing that ties into this is the whole effort to transfer public lands to states. And, they're using this extremism to their benefit, but never forget that the driving force behind that is special interest. And a few states that think that they can turn a quick buck by selling off our nation's natural assets. This is exactly opposite of the values espoused by Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "I do not intend that our natural resources should be exploited by the few against the interest of the many." So, he's a Republican, he's a great president, he's on Mount Rushmore. I think we need to try to get more people on both sides of the aisle to embrace his view of what our public land should be.
Excellent points. Thank you.